Melanated family, how is everybody doing today? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Melanated Convo podcast. I know I was here yesterday, but so what? I want to keep it going. Family, I got more to say. Family, I got more guests. I got more interesting people that I think you guys need to hear from. Now, this sister has been on the show before, and now we're going to try to make this a regular thing. You know what I mean? She's very insightful, has a great perspective about the country that we live in and all the things that we go through. And that's all I'm looking for. I don't want to be biased. Like, we don't come on here to bash anybody or take a particular group and target them. But history and facts and what has happened, you can't really escape that. So we got to talk about those things as well, right? So on the show today, again, this is a brand new episode of the Melanated Convo podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe, become a member of the family, all that good stuff. On the show today is a sister who has her own consulting firm, Ascribe Educational Consulting, anti-racist and strategist. She goes into the job and look around and say, y'all ain't treating us right. Let me give you a blueprint. Let me calmly walk you through what you can do, because we gotta. I don't like racism in white people who practice it, but some white people just don't know. Just don't know. I ain't been around black folks my whole life. Now I gotta manage one. Now I gotta manage Shaquita.
Absolutely.
I may say a few things, so it's important that we bring things like this to light. On the show today, I have none other than Sonia Williams-Lewis. How you doing today, sister?
I am wonderful. I'm always happy to be in spaces with individuals like you. Like, you bring a certain spirit and energy to a room, to a topic that just can't be denied or ignored. And so I am just happy and proud that you have set up this platform and gathered enough energy behind you. It's the synergy that keeps the ball rolling, right? Mm-hmm. It's like when I get tired, I know I got someone to pass the baton to. And we can't say these things enough. We can't, one thing that I know for sure is that if we continue to repeat the past, we're going to keep on getting the same responses. But if we train enough people and give enough people the information and tools to do better, then we can see change happen. So I'm always happy to be here with you, talking with you, Harrison.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much, sister. So let's get right into it, because I know you got a lot to say about some of these things. Some of these things I talked about before, but you know what? You can have the same conversations 10 times and get 10 different things out of it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's why picking someone's brain, a different mind, a different perspective, that is needed. So let's get into it. A couple weeks ago, Sonia, at a high school here in Northern California, name of the high school, I don't want to put them on blast, but I do. River Valley High School.
We have to.
You know what I mean? River Valley High School in Yuba City had to cancel the football season, Sonia, because white students decided to do a mock slave draft, or a mock slave auction rather, and the black children was willing. So Sonia, when you see something like this, your first thoughts, I sent you the article, right? Your first thoughts when you see the optics of this situation, what goes through your mind?
Like, really, today in 2022, that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is this has been a repeated topic of conversation, not just, people say, oh, you in California, is so progressive there. This is a Democratic blue state. I tell people, and I have to remind them all the time, California might have blue politicians, but they have very red politics. And so regardless of the fact of what the outward messaging might be, the optics say that we haven't taught our children enough about interracial, cultural communication and how to get along with each other. And the way that we haven't done that is we've failed to give them opportunities to learn about each other's histories. And so this is what I tell people. I used to be a high school history teacher, taught history for almost 20 years. And everyone, not just Black kids, but everyone can name the top 5 Black historical figures, right? Just think about that. Just start naming them. Dr. King, Rosa Parks,
Martin Luther King, no Malcolm X, no Malcolm X.
No Malcolm. But Thurgood Marshall, Bessie Coleman, it's this Mae Jameson. It's the same ones repeated over and over again. So what that does is say there's this really small group of Black folks who have contributed to this country and done great things. When in all actuality, this country was built on the backs of Black folks, and they did it for free. And so when you talk about what we don't know, sometimes we get caught in that catch-22 of, I didn't know better, so I'm acting this way because somebody modeled this behavior to me. And so part of me is like, okay, Black children, why are we participating in this type of very racist interaction of who you are as an individual? But part of it is what we don't know, we don't know. And so it's up to us as adults to continue to get on those bullhorns and whatever platforms we can and say, pump the brakes. This isn't okay, and this is why it's not okay. And so I'm more upset. My upset and pistivity isn't even with the white children who thought that this was a thing to do, right? It is with the adults that are in those white children's lives because somebody told them it's okay.
Yep. And and so the white and the school canceled the football season. This is a slap in the face. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing it, Sonia. The school canceled the football season, not because we just practice a level of racism that if these white children continue, we don't want to get to talking about what they may end up doing, what groups they may end up joining. So we got to stop all this. They said, no. We just ain't got enough for the football team. So yeah, y'all suspended, but we're going to cancel the football season only because now we got 8 players instead of 11. And I think this is, I can't understand this behavior, Sonia, but how do you, so the Black parents, because I when I talked about it before, I came to a conclusion that maybe the Black parents have not spoken to their children about the ins and outs of our history because the kids wouldn't have accepted it, because my son goes to a primarily white school and he uses racism, small bouts of it, misunderstandings as teachable moments. And he has white friends and he pulls them to the side and said, hey, what you just said ain't cool, but let me tell you why. And if the white kid is fair-minded, he'll say, whoa, really? You may change his life.
Absolutely.
So what do you say to the Black parents, Sonia?
Yeah, oftentimes what I see, especially in our community, there's this divide. We've been sold this really narrow narrative of what American success looks like. And so while we're trying to, and I have conversations with my parents who are, babies of the 40s and 60s, right? 40s and 50s. And so my father, for example, his primary goal in life was, I just got to fly under the radar. I want to get along, right? And so whatever that means I need to do, if that means that it seems like I'm shucking and jiving and I'm coming to work with a smile on my face and I'm telling them, yes, sir, how can I jump, sir? Right? We fall into that trap of what success looks like. We also forget like the struggles of our ancestors. And I say that because in having these intergenerational conversations with the elders, one of the things that my parents and my aunties and uncles often tell me is, we kind of dropped the ball with telling y'all the things that y'all needed to survive, right? So there was this era that we call the crack era, the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s. And a lot of people, because drugs were so a part of our community, poverty was so part of our identity, there wasn't an opportunity to lift up the history. We were trying to survive. And so now flip ahead to the adults that are today, 50 and under. You would be hard pressed to be like, find a group of 100 Black folks in any community that could really explain the historical landscape of how Black folks have been oppressed in this country. And so that's part of the problem, right? But another part of the problem is that we rely on the schools to teach us things. And we just say, oh, that has to be good for our baby. So let's focus on algebra. Let's focus on chemistry. Let's focus on, writing English appropriately, right? And that's another topic of conversation. But what we fail to do is instill pride in our young ones, because they then begin to emulate and gravitate towards people who don't look like them. And I always ask this question, I'm the mother of 6 Black boys, and I ask this question of your boys who attend schools that are not primarily Black, right? Mine do too. And so when the little girls come like, ooh, you cute. And those little girls don't look like your mama, your auntie, your sister, your cousins, and all of that kind of stuff. I often ask my boys, what about the little Black girls on your campus that look like your mama?
Ooh.
And imagine back in the day, what the message that would be sent to me if I didn't have someone who was interested in me. What does that do to our race as a people? And I'm not interested in contributing to the erasure of my people who have already been silenced and oppressed and traumatized over and over again in this country. So it's so many dynamics and layers. We just have to be very cognizant of where do we fit in and standing up for and speaking up for those things like you're teaching your sons, like I'm teaching mine.
Damn, Sonia, look, man, we have to say this again. Black folks, if you prefer your child to bring home a man or young woman who look like they mama or daddy, take pride in that. We be trying to hide that. We go too far to say, well, love anybody. Yes, love anybody. I'm going to teach you the right way.
Right.
So you're going to know how to love anybody and while loving yourself. But there's nothing wrong with saying, I want your little girl to look like your mama, look like your sister. Other races of people, come on now, they practice this. We jump right into inclusion. And it's, look, nothing wrong with that. But you got to be willing and have the courage to say, look, bring home who you want. But come on now. Talk to me, because I would think if you have a kid that maybe you didn't speak to about race and things like that, and they bring home a woman or a man who don't look like you, I don't care what nobody says. It has to be a conversation. Now, if you prideful in your young Black self, but this is who you picked, I mean, damn, but okay. But if you don't really rock with us and the woman you picked is based on the fact that you have an angst towards your community, we never address this. People aren't just picking partners because they like how they look. Sometimes it was something about my mama. It was something about the trauma that I had to deal with growing up in the hood. I want to disassociate from all of it. And I've heard women say, Sonia, I don't want my son or daughter to have nappy hair. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What are we doing? You know what I mean?
These are, when I go and do this work, like I am an anti-racist solutionist. And so I go into spaces and try to curate space where we can have courageous conversations just like this. And I agree, it's nothing wrong. I have, 6 children by birth. I have 4 additional children by marriage. I'm not going to be mad at any of them for whoever they bring home. But if you bring someone home who doesn't look like you, the conversation I want to be clear about is what does your self-love look like? Because oftentimes it boils down to, and I have a son who has told me, Mom, you, my aunties, my grandmas, y'all loud. You represent what the ghetto is like. And so I have to be reflective, right? And say, woo, what message am I sending to my boys, right? So that's one part of it. And then I intentionally, because who I am is I like to make my children think analytically. And I say, oh, who are the girls at your school that, get in trouble? And when we begin to point them out, they then point out Latinx girls. And I'm like, oh, so what would be the descriptor of a Latinx girl who is a little bit loud? Oh, she's just a little feisty and spicy.
Oh.
So why is she feisty and spicy and not loud and ghetto? Because society has conditioned us to use very negative terms about Blackness, very ugly terms about Blackness. And that's unfair. And so if we can have a conversation like that, I have one son who has dated the entire rainbow. I'm cool with that. Mommy has dibbled and dabbled in other races too. However, I love me some blackity black, right? And because I know and I'm comfortable in my skin, I know that I can get in where I fit in. But I'm not going to compromise who I am as an individual, how I show up. If the day I want to show up and I got an afro, if the day I show up and I got braids, if the day I show up and it's bone straight, like, Kiki and them. I can show up in those spaces like that and own it, rock it, and be proud of it. It becomes negative when the representation and the images that we receive are negative about Black folks.
Definitely. And I think parents, Sonia, that's why I harp on history, because for me, it's almost like the solution, because I understand people are going to, their perspective after learning it will be different. Black people ain't the same, but the bottom line need to be when a issue involving race is, when your child is faced with the issue involving race, you need to be able to articulate what they're looking at, all sides of it, non-biased sides of it, and then let them make a decision. Too many parents get faced with a racism type situation, and it's the first time. They never thought. I know Black people who are good people, who, meaning they go to work, they take care of their family, they don't steal, they don't lie. But if something racist happens, they got to sit and think for a minute.
Right.
They don't know what the hell they just witnessed. I said, damn, I post stories about history, Sonia, and I have 53-year-old man saying, I never knew about that, and a tear dropped from my eye. Like, God damn, what if he knew about this as a young man? He probably going through life blaming himself, because people don't realize when we don't know how to articulate racism and don't know how to contextualize it, you blame yourself. Damn, maybe I am too Black.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not good enough.
Yeah, and I mean, take that a step further, comes along again with this ideation that we are trying to fly below the radar so that folks don't recognize us. It's almost like we're giving them permission to silence our voices when we don't step up and say the things that stand up for justice and humanity. Because I really and truly think that it's a heart issue. It is not just a diversity is about numbers, right? Okay, do I have enough others in the room to say that my numbers look good? Equity, when we talk about equity, is providing people with the things that they need in order to succeed. But inclusion is saying, I really and truly want to hear your voice. But take that even a step further and think about how liberating it will be if all of us have the freedom to be at various levels and not feel that we're marginalized to certain areas of an organization, certain areas of a state that you can live in, right? Certain areas, you can't go into politics, right? We're seeing that play out right now in the lovely state of Georgia, where there is this narrative, and it's a false narrative. I believe that it's a false narrative that Black men don't support Black women. I don't know too many Black men who don't represent and recognize that they came from a Black woman.
Yep.
So to have the Republicans shaping this narrative that Black men don't support Stacey Abrams is such a falsehood, and it makes me cringe that that's another way for you to divide our community. And so when we look at these issues, and you have someone who's moved out into the suburbs, like a Yuba City, which is not far from us here in Sacramento, you are moving away from the things that remind you maybe of oppression or struggle. And I get it. Like, we all want to feel like we made it to a certain degree. I was listening to a interview, and someone asked a question about, if Nipsey Hussle had left the hood, maybe he would be alive today. And I'm thinking to myself, well, dang, I did that. So, you and I share something in common. We are graduates of Luther Burbank High School, which is a hood school back in the day, right? I'm the class of 1989. So back then, Burbank was nicknamed Blood Bank because bloodshed could happen at any time because of gang fights and intercommunal violence. I can remember being 18 and making a very critical decision in my life. I'm going to college, and I'm going as far away from here as I can. I don't want to end up like Shaniqua and them having 5 babies before I'm 25, right? That was a conscious decision. But what I noticed as I got older is my hood did not change over time. And so I came back to that very same hood, and I asked myself, how can I be instrumental in helping the folks that didn't make it out? Helping their children realize that there's a way to stay in the hood and live the American dream, live our dream, because it's been an American nightmare for Black folks, if you ask me. But then that gives me an opportunity to go to people who are in elected positions of power and say, why haven't there been any changes in Meadowview in 30 plus years? Ask yourself that. Where's the tax base and the tax dollars to go and support those children, those schools, those communities, that employment and unemployment level? Why is poverty still a thing in that community? And you can see that all around this country, that there's a hood everywhere that somebody's struggling to get out of.
Yep. And that so what Sonia just did, you guys, is that's insightful, because most of us, if you're looking at despair and poverty in streets with all type of shit on them, and not good grocery stores, and not a lot of malls, not a lot of restaurants, a smart person to say, I don't want to have to deal with this. A smart person.
I want out.
But people always, because rappers and hip hop, I love hip hop, they always hit you with, you got to get out the hood. You got to get the hood. I say, yeah, but create the caveat, fellas. You leave.
Yes.
Then you come back in the capacity in which you can help the most. You may not be a political figure. You may not have a lot of money. Just go back and look around and say, damn, what can I do? I made it out. Sometimes my voice is enough. Walking around the park I used to grow up in and say, hey, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a construction worker, I'm something different than these guys. I look cool just like these dudes y'all looking up to. Try this. See, so sometimes we think two things can be right at the same time. You cannot like poverty and despair, but want to help the people. People think they gotta choose one sometimes, Sonia, and that's the wrong way. You gotta love your people while still being frustrated with the system, with how we have participated. Like, you can do both, right? So Sonia, answer me this. If you had to go to this high school, boom, you get the call. We just had a mock slave auction. Our teachers don't know what to do. Our teachers don't think it was that bad. I mean, you know, how do you approach the conversation with them?
If I were a parent and had children at that school, I would be asking my children, one, to lend their voice, and how does that make you feel? So let's break down the narrative, right? And let's use the appropriate language to identify, so that we can then begin to process what feelings might come up. So I can remember being a teacher back in the day, and there was this trend of hands-on learning experiences. And when it came to history in particular, they wanted to teach. I can remember this like it was yesterday, and this had to be at least 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But they wanted us to teach the Middle Passage by having students lay down in rows next to each other, so that they felt what it feels like to be in close proximity to each other. And so in the back of my mind, I was like, so you want us to feel like a slave, right? Okay, so you want us to feel like we are in prison, because, you know, there's this leap that we can make in correlation to slavery and that of our prison system, but I won't go there yet. So if I'm a parent and I'm hearing this, because I consider myself well-read, culturally, informed about my Black history, I'm pulling my babies aside and saying, look, this is why this isn't okay. And I'm gonna need you to be as vocal as possible and fight for your. So there are three things that I always teach young people that is important. Your voice is important. And so every opportunity you get, use your voice. The second is agency. Identify what your needs are, right? So if you need this, say, I need to fight for that. And then become an advocate, because agency is about yourself. Advocacy is about you fighting for others. So your voice, you use it to fight for your needs, and then take it to the next level and fight for others. And so that would be my prescription to any young person in that situation. And if they weren't heard, I think it's the responsibility of Black parents to then go in there and demand some things. As an outsider looking in who does this work, who has experience in the school system, I've been making phone calls over to Yuba City Unified for the past week and a half, like, tag me in. I got some solutions for you, right? Tag me in. You're going to write the check, but tag me in, because this is not no faint of heart We ain't gonna have no kumbaya moments. Yes, having these challenging conversations are going to evoke a little bit of silence and uncomfortability. But once we get past the silence and uncomfortability, there are some solutions. And all you have to do is present it in a way that tugs on the heartstrings of people. Because at the end of the day, like you said, two things can be true at the same time. None of us were alive when these systemic, structural, and institutional racist procedures, practices, and norms were even developed. None of us. I need you now knowing that none of us were alive then. So that means it's not none of our faults. But we got to get out of whose fault it is and who's pointing what finger at who and say these two critical questions. Do I benefit from racism or am I oppressed by racism? And if you benefit from racism, it's your job to make sure that other folks are not oppressed by racism. And if you are oppressed by racism, it's your job to make sure that the folks who benefited see, hear, and advocate on your behalf. This isn't our job to fix. I wholly believe it's not Black folks' job to go in and say, we got to fight for one more thing. What was the civil rights movement for? You know, what was the lynching movement for? What were all of these times since the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865? What were all those movements for? We did what y'all said. You told us to go and be strong and pull ourselves up by our bootstrap, and you burnt down Tulsa, Oklahoma. And by the way, there were so many more Tulsa, Oklahomas around this country. True. They don't want you to know about that.
Yep.
They don't want, just like they don't want you to know about all of the Black contribution that has come to this country by the hands and genius of Black folks. They don't want you to know it was that the New York City Central Park, Seneca Village was a Black enclave. Rosemont, right? Rosewood, Florida, a Black enclave. Chicago, Illinois, a Black enclave.
Yep.
And they burnt these cities, areas, and towns down, or they destroyed them with urban growth. So you either had the destruction of white mobs, or you had the destruction of city politics that came in and said, where are we going to build at? Oh, well, we can tear down that area over there where the Black folks are, and we can just displace them. They used to being moved around.
That's something. And look, couple things. Oh man, Sonia, you hitting on it, because I was in New York maybe 6 years ago. I had a hotel room, Sonia, right over Central Park, and a beautiful visual, right? But in my mind, all I'm doing is imagining where they lived. I'm looking around the park in my mind, imagining what was right there before they so rudely threw us out, use eminent domain and all this other shit to get us out of the way. You see what I'm saying? And people don't realize. And I speak to a lot of people who are in close proximity to the California Reparations Task Force. My brother Chris Lodson comes on the show and does a great job. And because I do these shows with him, I've been looking, at California's stake in all of this, and I found some articles where Black people were saying in the late 1800s, early 1900s, their family had 42 acres, and all of a sudden it was gone. Now it's Malibu Beach, or it's one of these oceanfront properties, and I'm like, damn, we looking at the places that have been literally burned, and violence erupted, which has happened, but sometimes it wasn't no violence.
Right. No violence. It was city politics. These were people in positions of power who made a decision. We are going to disrupt the lives of Black communities. My mother grew up in the 50s. She was born in 1950 in Chicago, and she lived in an all-Black neighborhood. They lived in a beautiful home that had a front yard and a backyard. They drove their little vehicle, and the freeway was being built in 1955. And the mayor at the time had to decide where we're going to build the freeway in, because there was this national effort to build a freeway system to connect all of the states. So Highway 80 went from all the way in Chicago all the way to California. That was the goal. And so what they did was they destroyed an entire Black community, Black beautiful houses. Like when I see pictures of these beautiful brownstones, 3-level, three-story homes that can have multiple families in it, I'm like, dang. Imagine today the property value, if we could get that back from the city of Chicago, right? Because my folks, I believe, were owed something. But what happened was my aunt and uncle, they would be my great aunt and uncle, who were my parents, my mom and her family lived with, they were paid off. And that meant that my mom and her family were ushered off to the projects. And she grew up in the Robert Taylor homes, which is one of the most notorious housing projects in the United States. It was massive poverty. But it didn't have to be that way because they had jobs. They had a way of sustaining themselves. They had schools. They had an infrastructure to rely on one another in their own community. And it was destroyed. And so, yeah, we get told about, oh, it was white violence and mobs who went in and burnt up Tulsa, Oklahoma. But you don't talk about the city ordinances and governments that said, oh, we're going to take this from Black folks.
Yep.
And that still happens to this day.
Still happens to this day, and people just don't understand what they're looking at. I'm in the urban community. I grew up in South Sacramento, knowing what you just mentioned, Sonia, how in the 50s and 60s, a concentrated effort to put freeways through the ghettos of America.
Yes.
They shoved the freeway in. Now they get to uprooting you. Now you got to move somewhere else, or they it became a lower quality area because of it.
Yeah.
This is horrible, and it's happened a lot. So this is all stuff people need to be aware of, because I tell people, you know, we were systematically deprived of things. Now, this isn't an excuse. I'm tired of people DMing me, telling me pick myself up on my bootstraps. I've done it. And note to everybody, I'm doing pretty well. But so what?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, they can knock on my door with a new rule. And what am I going to do? It happened to our parents where they were living their lives doing the best they could. Nobody came with violence. They weren't violent. Laws, legislation, things were changed. And before you know it, they're giving you a 30-day notice. And that's important for everybody to realize. Now, what I want to tie that into, Sonia, is because talking about this school and how they've handled it, how they will handle it. We just shared an article. Me and you shared an article about how DEI, how do they focus too much on Black people when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion? Do these programs focus too much on Black Americans and not other marginalized people?
Yeah. And I say no. I've been doing this work for almost 15 years now. I left the school system and I saw the margins that, you know, Black and brown and poor and foster youth were being relegated to. And so I said to myself, how can I be effective in the ways in which to challenge the systems of DEI as they existed then? And so this is my challenge to people is, DEI is a conversation starter. It is a place to start. But if you are truly, truly interested in changing the narrative and having a social justice impact and improving your global footprint on the communities in which you serve, you have to lift from the bottom. So I look at it, here's the spectrum, right? And if we talk about the spectrum from white to Black, and we can agree that white folks are getting the lion's share of the resources and Black folks are left with the scraps. And then if we flip that spectrum from top to bottom, and white is on top and Black is on bottom, if you lift from the bottom, ultimately you're going to lift everybody, right? And so that's the representation that I want people to think about, is that if you're lifting from the bottom, everybody gets lifted. So let's identify who's at the bottom. And if you are challenged by the fact that this country has systemically, institutionally, and structurally relegated certain demographics, and it happens to be the same demographic over and over again to the bottom, we have to begin to question if the system, the way it is actually working. And so I say kudos to those organizations. And let me just say, there was a shift in these conversations after the very public, brutal lynching. And I'm going to say that again, public, brutal lynching that was intentional of George Floyd, right? Organizations around this country, around the world even, made public statements. We are not condoning racism anymore. And we're going to put dollars towards efforts to improve our efforts to increase DEI, cultural norms, understanding, right? And so now I'm saying, All I'm saying is we can't go backwards. We can't go back to that old norm that says, oh, we did this little training. Here's your certificate. Let's have this kumbaya moment because now Becky and them are not going to come to work and ask me, can she touch my hair? Right? We have to go deeper than that. We have to go deeper and ask a question of why a Becky would even think that I was like a pet and wanted to touch my hair, right? Or why Boss Norm would say, I need you not to come to work with your hair looking wild and unkept. And who are you to say what's wild? So it's the narrative, right? We get to use the words to describe us. Perfect example. My son is now, one of my boys is now a 7th grader, but when he was in the 4th grade, he had a teacher who described him as, what 3rd grade? What did she describe you as? She described him as aggressive. And when I got the note, she wrote the note home and she said, Idris was a little bit aggressive on the playground with his classmates. My first question was, who were his classmates? One of the kids was white and one of the kids was Asian. I said, in this note, you didn't write down that Idris and his 2 classmates were aggressive. And though, as a matter of fact, those 2 other parents, they didn't get a note home, right? And so I brought that teacher a stack of books, about 10 books high, and I'll come into her classroom with a smile on my face. And I said, before you ever describe and categorize another Black child, specifically a Black male child, I'm gonna need you to read a book or 2. And it's so negative when you describe. If the message that you're sending to my child is that he's aggressive, you're going to go into the break room and have conversations with other teachers who are going to get my child in the next grade. And they're going to say, oh, remember when such and such said that kid was aggressive? And that sets the stage for bias. That sets the stage for, I'm not intentionally trying to identify you as aggressive, but because someone has already planted the seed that they thought you were aggressive, I'm not going to take the chance to get to know you for myself. And that's a disadvantage to Black children, to brown children, to immigrant children, to children who are Muslim, to children who are LGBTQ+. All of the demographics that get marginalized, it's not fair to them because of those kind of things.
Definitely. And I think us talking about the news story with the kids in high school who basically had a slave auction, the white kids put the Black kids on a slave auction, I think that school could benefit from a program like yours, because again,
absolutely,
we have to understand that the parents of these white kids, the history that's taught in these schools, it's dangerous to teach one child, the kid sitting next to you, people that look like you used to own him, period.
Right?
If you put the period afterwards, remove race. Think about if anybody told you that. Yeah, we friends, but let me get mad at your ass.
Right.
I'm going to remind you what they taught us on last Thursday, that you, my friend, I used to own your that kids, you got to teach them more. You got to keep going. Yeah. And it needs to be alarming to parents when my son, when he go to school, I say, hey, history class, what'd you learn? I said, okay, they dropped the ball. What'd you learn today? Okay, they dropped the ball. I said, okay, they're not going to go into it, Sonia. They ain't going to go into it. I said, damn, no man Samusa, huh? None?
No.
Okay, cool. Okay. I mean, he could have been the richest man ever, but I mean, you want to leave him out? This is purposeful. So parents, grab a hold, figure out a way to teach it, figure out how you like to teach it, figure out the parts of it that you think, because we know what's true. Maybe you're not with all the marching and the protesting, and then you kind of Black Lives Matter, you want to back up. Cool. But in your house, don't lie to your children, because then at 13, 14, they get called a nigger and it shocks their world. This is Timmy. Yeah. Me and Timmy been we've been classmates since 5th grade. Mom, why would he say that? No, but being honest, a kid would feel that. We've been sharing lunch, we've been kicking it, like the same music, play on the same team, and you talk to me like this, because we got to be honest, everybody has harsh words for not just a group, but we have harsh words for people. We typically don't go to your race. I'm going to say that. Yeah. We typically will call you a name, but it's not typical that we use like stereotypes about your race to address you. I think that's rare. It's done to us more because of the history and everything. You know what I mean? So
absolutely,
these are important conversations, family. Now let's tie it all back in. When we look at, because we're going to talk now about my brother Kanye West, not about him specifically. I think the celebrity, the black celebrity in America, rapper, actor, otherwise, we need to examine their input. We need to examine what we're looking at. Like, I feel Kanye's my brother. He says a lot of things I don't agree with all the time, actually. But you know what he actually is to me, Sonia? He is a musical, hear me when a musical genius.
Yeah.
It's music is what he does primarily. He does good business, it looks like, but musically is where he's been able to captivate us. Why do we have these type of individuals in political spaces, in spaces where it looks like he may be trying to empower us, but then we're getting all these mixed messages? And I don't want us to say, well, let's cancel Kanye. No, get your important information from other places. How do you feel about that thing where celebrities get catapulted to certain positions in our society?
Yeah, I think it's really, really unfortunate that someone's lack of expertise and experience is even the voice of reason that represents a community. So when I saw the image of Kanye and Candace Owens in these t-shirts of White Lives Matter, the first thing that came to mind was like, are we really giving, how much energy are we giving this? Like, right? So that was the first day. And I was like, okay, we really not gonna spend a whole lot. This is Kanye, right? That we're talking about. And then day 2, and it's still trending. And day 3, it's still trending. And a week later, it's still trending. And now he's getting interviews with these we know the racist media, right? We know the Tucker Carlsons of the world. My girl Karen Hunter on XM Radio, Sirius XM Radio, Urban View. She calls Tucker Carlson. She calls him Fucker Carlson because she says everything that comes out of his mouth is fucked up. And so Kanye went on his show
twice,
mind you, right?
He had him back,
and And so I'm asking myself, okay, I tried not to give this energy, and I was hoping that other Black folks wouldn't give it energy. But now that it has become this thing, I have to now begin to ask the question of those who have come from places and know what poverty is, how you can miss the mark of going back and helping, right? And so people that come to mind are like a Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes was very instrumental here in California when Stephon Clark was murdered.
I remember.
Movie producer Dion, oh my goodness, I'm drawing the book. Dion Taylor, instrumental, not just with his voice and presence, but with dollars, right? So you will have some celebrities who are extremely responsible to the places that they have come from. But then you have the Kanyes and I say the Jay-Z's of the world, because even though I love me a Jay-Z lyric, I ain't seen no hat changes in Marcy Projects. Where he from? And so we have to begin to ask those questions. And I recognize that being a billionaire takes you into another echelon of society that is very different, and you have to begin to navigate in those spaces. But if you don't get into those spaces and share about the spaces from which you've come from, you're doing a disservice to your, not only your identity, but your children's identity. So I worry for not so much a Kanye, I worry about his children, because they're going to be met with someone down the line that is going to remind them very matter-of-factly that your daddy ain't shit. They are going to remind, and it might be somebody closer rather than further in distance to them, considering that the mother of their children is not Black, right? So they're in spaces automatically immediate proximity to people who are not Black. And granted, we can go into a conversation about how the Kardashians co-opt Blackness every day of the week. Every last one of them are emulating Black women. Professional. They They are rich bitches because they want to look black, right?
Yep.
But the realization is, even though they might get in the bed in the sheets with someone who's black, tokenize them, have babies with black men, at the end of the day, the people who are going to save them if some shit go down, it's going to be other white folks. It ain't going to be black folks coming to their defense. And so their children are going to be taught that white folks come and save the day, and black folks come and mess up the day. And then they're going to look into the mirror, and we can use Jane Elliott, who is a educator who created the baby doll test for little 5-year-olds. And they asked all the babies, which baby doll would you prefer? And every child, regardless of race, said that the white doll was good and the black doll was bad. So I'm worried about Kanye's children in that perspective, not so much a Kanye, because we can defer all day long that Kanye has some mental health challenges, and there are moments where he's really good and he says, I'm in therapy and I'm taking my meds. And then things like this happen, and we have to question, is he going to therapy and is he taking his meds? And then who and why are you giving validity to someone who we know is diagnosed with mental illness? And I don't ever want to put a message into the world that people who are suffering with mental illnesses get a pass, but we have to recognize that mental illness is a factor in some of these things. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that, he can use that celebrity in a way by turning it on and turning it off. It's like, bruh, your skin, you dark like me. You're not like a Jay-Z. You not a Drake. You're a dark-skinned black man. But, the celebrity speaks for, and that's the unfortunate part. He's not an expert, and he should not be given platforms.
And so, that makes it so difficult, because I know everybody wants to just write the brother off, and he pisses me off sometimes, because this is what I have to do because of what I do now. I see a news clip about what somebody said or what happened. I have to go watch the whole thing. I have to get context. So I said, ooh, he interviewed with Tucker Carlson. Maybe he gonna give it to this asshole. Ooh, get him, Kanye. And I watch and I think, I rewind and I say, what the fuck did he just say?
Yeah, what did you just say? And then you went back.
I don't know what that meant, Kanye. And you say, okay, I wore, and I'm thinking he's going to explain why he wore the shirt. I don't have to agree with why he wore it. It was stupid. That shirt was designed on some white supremacist shit in like 2015. They knew what they was doing, Kanye. Tell me you know this. Tell me you know this. Tell me, and you're going to say why I wore it because they said I couldn't.
Yeah, this is also the individual that said that black folks had a choice to be a slave or not. And so we know that you are not red. Obviously, your time at Howard University was not spit in your history classes with some history text. I'm a graduate of a HBCU, and I know for certain that the curriculum at HBCUs in particular are teaching us about us. And so apparently he didn't go to class on those days, right? So one, we're talking about an individual who is delusional by money. So we know that this is a capitalistic country, and because of colonization, it is created the haves and the have-nots. And now that you've made enough money to be a have, you now discounting the have-nots? When the have-nots is the ones that catapulted your career to get you to a position, now that you're there, it's more of the haves that keep you in those positions, right? Because I don't know too many black folks who is walking around wearing your slave looking clothing. Like I know some folks who then bought some Yeezys, but beyond that, that.
Oh, you muted. Hold on. Oh, there you go. I
don't know too many black folks that have purchased his clothing line. Now, with that being said, he also went and brokered deals with these big time companies who ultimately said, we ain't with your shit because this doesn't make sense to our bottom line. It's not going to bring us the profit that we want. And so to me, that again is another sign and testament that you aren't as business savvy as you claim to be. You've made some money. You've created some trends. You've been a great entertainer, but you're not as business savvy as you thought you were. And
Yep.
so if we continue on to flip that dollar, my suggestion to a Kanye is come back to the hood where you was bred and born,
Hmm.
because we're gonna get you right. It's gonna be always somebody's big mama that's gonna be like, come on here, boy. I know you got some issues up there upstairs, but we're gonna bring you back into the fold. And this is what I need you to do. You're gonna start back at the bottom and work
Hmm.
your way back up.
Yep. And Sway tried to tell him a long time ago. And I heard he addressed this. I didn't hear it, so I can't speak to that. But Sway told him, bro, do the shit yourself.
Yeah.
No. No,
No.
and actually, this speaks value. He didn't say no, y'all. He said, how?
Yeah.
In his mind, that ain't even a possibility, bro. I gotta go through Gucci. I gotta go through
Yeah.
Adidas. So this is a brilliant man, but to listen to him for political information, how we should handle injustice, this is just wrong. Nobody asked Brad Pitt, what should white folks do with their life? Nobody goes to white celebrities and asks them, okay, the state of the world, tell us about it.
Yeah.
And Tucker Carlson is sitting there smiling. I'm like, you bastard. Come on, Kanye D. We allow politics and we allow sometimes different sets of white folks to use us against each other. That's why I thought it was perfect that you said how white supremacy divides us, because they got us arguing about this man wearing a goddamn White Lives Matter t-shirt. When in actuality, we should have seen it, flipped up, and thought no more about it afterwards.
No energy whatsoever. And that's the unfortunate part about it. But if we go back to just that narrative about a high school in a progressive state like California, not far from the capital, mind you, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. California could be its own country all by itself and still be doing better than the majority of countries around this globe. And so when you have a school in a position that has good resources and they're not using their resources to even meet the needs and expectations of providing cultural competence, like I've been to Yuba City. It has a huge Latinx community. It has a huge Middle Eastern Indian community. You would think that they're doing things a little bit different. But this is what I also know for sure. And I was listening to one of my my favorite anti-racism strategists in the field. His name's Dante King. And Dante said that the narrative of whiteness allows for us to move into places where we are not prominent, and we take on the norms of that area, right? So if it is a primarily white area, we take on the norms of what it means to live and move and survive in that area. The unfortunate part about it is our proximities. So you and we can have a conversation all day long on, I know where I'm from. My connection to, if anybody sees us, they're going to say, oh, this Black woman, and they're going to make assumptions about her. This Black man, and they're going to make assumptions about him. But I also have to, because every time I open my mouth, and if I'm articulate enough to pique someone's interest and ear, right? It then begins people to ask the question, oh, where did you go to college, right? That even that kind of questioning speaks to my proximity to whiteness, right? So I have multiple degrees. So I have to walk in the fact that I can open doors that Shaniqua and them, who I left in Meadowview, cannot open the door of. And so that's the importance for me, who has somebody from my old neighborhood who remembers Sonia from back in the day, growing up on those streets in South Sac. She can speak for us because she from where we from. She made it out, and she comes back and sees that the changes haven't happened. And so that's the value of, to me, the agency of a Jay-Z compared to that of a Kanye. Jay-Z has agency to go in and advocate. Kanye doesn't. Kanye can talk about himself and his issues, but he hasn't mastered the ability to be a businessman enough to come back and help.
And so those are the differences. I mean, I love, love, love this ideation of a Nipsey Hussle being able to stay in his hood, support his hood, and bring talent out of his hood, right? And the exchange, it's the exchange of ideas and commerce and money at the end of the day, right? But to then be the envy and the jealousy to seep in, that's exactly the way the system is designed. They started that on the plantation. You got your field Negroes and you got your house Negroes. And the lighter you are, the brighter your life gonna be. Unless you were a light-skinned Black woman who's having children with the slave master. And you know, I always say they paint this narrative that Sally Hemings was happy to give birth to Thomas Jefferson's children.
She was raped.
Who was a slave. And therefore, she didn't have a choice. And if you didn't have a choice, that's rape.
That's
all
rape.
day, every day. All
that's
day.
Rape.
Right?
Yep. And I think what I didn't like, because the Nipsey Hussle situation, I seen a lot of brothers in music or just brothers in general who, because I followed him since 2009. I'm a big fan of hip hop, so I'm always finding new artists. So I've been following like everything in detail. That's why I wear his clothes and everything. People be like, somebody asked me, damn, you wearing a lot of Crenshaw. I said, damn, the Negro mind.
Right.
This is my Gucci, bro. If this was a Gucci shirt and you seen 7 of them, you would say, damn, that nigga
I want one. Yes.
He's balling. You got all them Gucci's. But I'm wearing a Black man's clothes. And you're like, damn, he dead. Leave it alone. Why you keep?
Right.
Stop it. This is what he did was great, but you can't get away from the institutions that have been set up. The gangbang culture in America, this institution, whether we like it, hate it, feel indifferent about it, it's effective. Like the policies and the what they go by and how they live their life, it's spread across the entire United States, but that's specific. That's specific in the fact that this brother was he and all the rappers that end up in these situations.
Yeah.
I don't like when people outside of our community have anything to say about a dead rapper who got shot. I say he comes from a particular neighborhood. If you don't want to get to the root of the problem, mind your business.
Absolutely.
If you don't want to get to the root of the problem, because these are problems that we're having in our neighborhood. I know brothers who ain't rapping, who ain't wearing jewelry, who died at 21, at 19, at 17, 15 even.
We can name them. Right. And so that's the commodification of Black lives. It's like, what is the value that you bring to this country that we live in? Because at the end of the day, everything boils down to the dollars and cents that you bring to the table. And so are you going to make Gucci and them rich, or are you going to make your community rich? And so I am of that group of folks who say, yeah, Gucci nice, but I want to make sure that we can eat. And if we can eat enough and have extra to go and get Gucci, I'm Gucci with you. But if we ain't eating it, and I'm not just saying me and mine, I'm saying we as a collective, that's the problem, is that we oftentimes sell ourselves short as to what the possibilities are. Our ancestors that came out of slavery made a way out of no way. And they bubbled up. Like the majority of elected officials after the Emancipation Proclamation were Black men. I mean, like, think about that. But today, we can't get a Black person elected into these political offices. And so there's an intentional reason behind that. This is the design of colonialism. This is the design of capitalism, to keep the 1% in control so that the 99 be guessing and then you're looking at each other like, no, you did it. No, you did it. So I'm going to get you and I'm going to get you, instead of looking at the 1% who's doing it to us all.
Yep. And sometimes I watch some of the Black people around me, and I know people who are well off financially. They're doing a little bit better. I know people who live paycheck to paycheck. I know people who are below that. But all of us got to realize, like, if you want to help out, I know you're sharing stuff about police brutality on social media, and I appreciate that. Social media is a great way to get the message out. But everybody got a job to do. Absolutely. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care what you're doing. You got kids, then you have a job to do. You have a job to teach. And I tell everybody all the time, Sonia, it's not my fault you was born Black. That we tough, but we got a responsibility. We can't just act like something ain't been going on forever. And I always tell myself, I have grandkids now. I don't want my grandkids in 2042 to
Right.
get pulled over by the cops and be nervous. Then what are we doing all this for? What's actually going on? So you can love your people and say, I'm gonna have this $500 and I'm gonna try to spend $350 with black folks. Then I'll give me a Gucci belt.
Right.
Okay. I say don't get it all, but two things can be true. You can do it. If you want to support other people or say, hey, that's my taste. This black man made a shirt. I actually don't like it. I like the other shirt more. Cool. But you got to make a concerted effort to do things for your people. So I appreciate everybody joining us. This was fire. I knew my sister Sonia was going to bring it for us. Look, family, we're going to try to do this every week where we bring
excited
topics, things that's going on in the community. This sister has been a teacher for a very long time. So that's important. Like that valuable information is important because people always tell me, no, I had no bad teachers. My teachers did this, they did that. I've had white teachers in my life that I felt tried to help me. But if they're dealing under a certain amount of like constraints, like if they only have a certain lesson plan to teach me, if they were given information that's not going to help me, they just going to regurgitate what they were given. But we have sisters and brothers who's been teachers as well, and that creates an insight. Being in these classrooms with these kids, do we know how much we leave our children with teachers? These are like part-time parents almost. Some of us, the teacher is seeing your 4th grade son more than you because you get off at 7 or 8. Not to knock you, you get off at 7 or 8. You feed them dinner, tuck them in the bed. That's an hour and a half. That lady at school, Miss Smith, she was with him 8 hours. You better talk to her. You better see how she feel about stuff. You know what I mean? So we're going to keep bringing these episodes to you guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Melanated Convo podcast. Oh, today, I think it came on already. Shit. So tomorrow, I was on my sister Felicia K's TV show. The First Lady Point of View talk show is coming on again tomorrow. I've been doing what I've been doing, y'all, for like 5 years now in different forms. I rarely stop and look back at what I've done or haven't done. I like to keep moving, make alterations, keep that thing popping. But when that came on TV, I had to stop. Sonia, I listen to myself talk every day. I have to edit these videos. I have to listen to like, blah, blah, blah. But when that came on TV, I had me a drink.
That was different.
I said back, I said, man, come on now. You're getting somewhere, boy. Now, damn, do I got a long way to go. But I'm making strides. So if you can, I'm going to post it again today. My Instagram is Melanated Convo 100. I'm going to post where you can watch the interview with my sister. I'm proud of that. We're making progress as a people. Everything I do is strictly for black folk. People meet me and they be like, damn, you what you talk? Yeah, my clothes, how I give it up. Yeah, I'm from the hood like everybody else. That's why I'm going to look and I'm going to dress how my brother's dressed.
Right.
How the men around me look. But I'm reading a couple books right now too. You know what I mean? I'm reading books, looking at documentaries, but I like hip hop and you can mix all of that, family. There ain't no way to be black.
Yes.
You see, just love your people. Under all of that, just have a deep love for your people and you can inspire. You feel me? So this is the Sonia, another episode of the Melanated Combo podcast. Sonia, thank you for joining us today. Tell everybody where they can reach you.
You can reach me on Facebook and Instagram at Sonia Williams-Lewis. And I know that that's weird, but when I was a kid, they used to say, Sonia Williams, she talked too much. And so that nickname has stuck. On Instagram, I'm Sonia Said It because I said what I said. And it's that simple.
Beautiful, beautiful. This is another episode of the Melanated Convo podcast. Go to the website, melanatedconvo.com. If you don't want to look for the stuff on YouTube, you don't want to look for the digital content, go to melanatedconvo.com. You'll find everything you need. Again, my Instagram is melanatedconvo100. We got to keep doing it, y'all. We ain't gonna stop. It's 40 million of us. We need like 25 on board. You know what I mean? Like, because all the rest of y'all gonna follow. All y'all Negroes sitting on the fence, it's all good. We'll get you. But we got to get most people on board to understand how important our liberation is and find a way to incorporate this mentality in your lifestyle, whatever it is, family. So this has been another episode of the Melanated Convo podcast. We out.
We out.